Badr Khan Suri, an Indian origin postdoctoral associate at the Georgetown University in the United States, has been arrested and is facing deportation. According to a statement from a Georgetown University spokesperson, Badr Khan Suri obtained a US visa to continue his doctoral research on peace building in Iraq and Afghanistan and was arrested outside his home in Virginia. He has been accused of, quote, spreading Hamas propaganda and, quote, close connections to known or suspected terrorists, unquote. Now, Suri has legally challenged the deportation attempt, saying no charges backed by evidence have been placed before the court for his arrest and extradition push, saying he hopes he will be given justice by the American judicial system. But Badr Khan Suri is among several pro-Hamas activists in the wake of violent protests across American campuses who are now facing action from the Trump administration. In fact, Donald Trump has even invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to take action against those he deems enemies of the American state. Now, while the counter-allegation is muzzling of free speech and expression, top intelligence sources closer home have brought to light the nexus Badr Khan Suri belongs to. And this is a CNN News 18 exclusive. US agencies are saying his visa has been revoked under clause of threat to foreign policy in the US. Intelligence sources closer home here in Bharat say he is going to be deported to Bharat and he will be questioned on his linkages with the Hamas. Now, intelligence sources are trying to find out if these linkages are restricted to online propaganda or is he involved in any military support to the Hamas too. He will also be questioned on his associates in Bharat. Intel sources say his father-in-law, Ahmad Yusuf, was an advisor to the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and a member of the Muslim Brotherhood for the last 45 years. Now, this also raises questions on American universities being havens for propaganda and radicalism in the garb of free thinking and, of course, humanities studies. Now, beyond Badr Khan Suri and other academics, there are other academics who have become part of this entire ecosystem and have found a place in Western intelligentsia. Let's have a look at some of them and then raise the larger question. Ashok Swine of the Uppsala University in Sweden. His OCI was axed over, quote, illegal activities inimical to Bharat's interests. Wendy Doniger, American Indologist. Penguin withdrew her book, The Hindus, An Alternative History, now as she faced legal charges of distortion to denigrate Hindus. Audrey Trushka, Rutgers University, published a book on Aurangzeb and faced charges of rationalizing atrocities on Hindus. Nitasha Kaul, University of Westminster, denied entry into Bharat over alleged pro-separatist comment on Kashmir. Vijay Prashad, historian at Trinity College. He is the executive director of the think tank Tricontinental. New York Times reported that he received funds from Neville Singham for Chinese propaganda. So the larger question that we are asking is, are Western varsities or varsities in the West becoming a sanctuary for such propagandists? Is it now becoming a hub for pushing, thrusting radical ideology that may cause social disharmony and anarchy in the garb of free thinking, free speech and humanities studies? Let's take this conversation forward. Professor Lavanya Vemsani, author, with us, Professor Nachiketa Tiwari, academician, with us, and we should also have Professor Manojit Mandal, political analyst and also a teacher at Jadavpur University, to join us anytime soon. Lavanya Vemsani ji plies her wares in the USA. Professor Nachiketa Tiwari is associated with the IIT in Kanpur. Namaste to everybody. Thank you very, very much. Let me first go across to Lavanya ji. Lavanya ji, what is happening under the Trump administration? What is your take on it? And then the larger question, are varsities in the West becoming a hub for such individuals and propagation of such ideology?
Thank you for having me, Anand. So yes, both questions are very relevant. And yes, for both questions. Varsities, of course, yes. The left ideology in the name of freedom of speech has actually become a hub for terrorism, supporting violence and activities that can be deemed anti-human rights, anti-peace. However, they show them as human rights activities, peace activities, but it's not. They're supporting terrorism. They're supporting terror activities. The links are coming out. So Trump administration is taking strict action under Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard. So there is strict action to control domestic terrorism. So they are taking action. They are bringing out these links. There are lots of campus protests after October 7th, as you are aware. So they are trying to expose the links by arresting the protesters and the organizers of these protesters, which will bring out many of these terrorist links. And surprising thing is, some of them are linked to India. So it's important for India to be proactive and examine the links that these people have in India. And Hamas, of course, there is evidence that extending into India. So it's time for India also to be proactive and examine these links.
But Lavanya ji, Hamas is not a banned or a proscribed organization in Bharat. There is an expression of support for Palestinians on the streets of our country, which happens quite often. But my larger question to you is, where is the line? Where does the buck stop? Or is it a gray area? Such propagandists in the name of humanities studies, when they push these thought processes, that's also filters into the education system in Bharat. So is that a problem? Is that a concern? But is it within the scope of legal scrutiny? Or is it in that gray area where such elements can escape legal scrutiny in the garb of academic pursuit?
It is done in the garb of academic pursuit. It has crossed the line. However, the left has supported this. Left has actually encouraged it, I would say. However, there is close scrutiny. And as far as the definition of freedom of speech goes, it doesn't extend into supporting destruction of properties, violence, or supporting any organizations that support violence. So this has entered into the gray area. So it's a problematic area, and the Trump administration is attempting to get into stopping the misapplication of freedom of speech. Of course, freedom of speech is important, but not support of violence.
See, not even support of violence. It's about the doctrine. There are those who may espouse, and there is a difference that should be drawn between a support for Palestinian cause and supporting Hamas. Now, Hamas in its official doctrine talks about wiping out Israel and the entire annihilation of Jews. Anybody who supports a thought process like this, what should be done with such people? Professor Nachiketa Tiwari, Manojit Mandalji is also with us. Manojit, namaste. I hope you are well and better and recovered. We got reports of how you had been treated in campus, and campus violence seems to be spreading all over.
Thank you.
But we'll come to you in a bit. Let me just get Professor Nachiketa Tiwari's thought. The fact is that Badr Khan Suri is an Indian citizen, Professor Nachiketa Tiwari. And there are a lot of people of Indian origin who are available at these varsities. One of them, a professor who is now just fled to Canada. So they will find areas where they'll ply their wares. Now, is the issue these people who have a particular thought process, or is it academia and varsities which allow such thought processes to flourish in the garb of free thinking and humanity studies, etc.?
Sure. So I'll talk about the ideology part first, because I think that's the crust of the larger problem. So after the Second World War, there was a lot of hopelessness, especially amongst leftist circles, that beyond Russia and China, communism couldn't advance. And they came up with a bunch of theories in Frankfurt and in Italy, and then some of these theories came to United States, known as critical theory, and then later it was succeeded by postmodernist thought. But at the end of the day, the basic goal was that how to establish the supremacy of Marxist thought, and if for that reason violence is required, then even that was intellectually, I mean, when you go to their texts, it was intellectually justified. So this is not in context of India. I mean, this was an outpouring of frustration, and a lot of this theorization happened in that particular context. And in that, and then as these theoreticians developed further, they have developed very elaborate argument as to why existing structures, especially in the West, and now with training from their gurus in the West, we have imported similar ideologies in India also, that why existing structures of society, nation, culture, everything needs to be destroyed. I mean, I'm very serious, and Lavanya Vamsani can correct me if I'm not saying this accurately enough. They actually need to be destroyed if you want to promote equality and fairness and all this stuff, which is the original goal of quote unquote Marxism. I mean, so so violence is okay. Destruction of every structure, family, religion, language, culture, whatever. If it requires to be destroyed, it should be destroyed. And in that pursuit, even if violence is required, that is intellectually justified. The third layer to this is that they just don't talk about theorization. There's also this word called praxis, so that you have to go out in the field and actually practice it. So you have a lot of scholars and professors from Delhi and far off places. They visit to places, not just for the fun of it in the heartland of our country and so on and so forth, where they learn, interact, and try to figure out how to craft narratives, how to develop strategies. So this is the overall framework in which this modern intellectual, leftist intellectual works, and that is the way to work. Now, in this process, what has happened is that the original content creators have been the West. We have barely, we have just followed their tracks. These ideologies get imported into our country. From morning till evening, in universities after universities, this stuff is taught. So it's it's silly to expect that the students will not fall for it. And this is what's happening. And what we are seeing is, so these students get trained here, and some of these have really harbor very acute sense of, that they are going to solve this global problem, and they are going to, do something. And their innocence and their vulnerabilities are exploited. And then they are roped into these ideological struggles.
Right.
And on top of that, there's this Islamist movement across the world. Again, it has been fueled a lot to a very large extent by the Americans. So they also tap into this frustration, and these bridges get developed.
Right.
And the consequences, you have this Badr Khan, Mr. Badr Khan, or a few days back, we had another national or citizen of our country who was, whose visa was annulled.
Correct.
So this is the way this is working, and and then they go to USA to further excel in these theories, with the expectation that after getting degrees, they'll come back as super experts in this, and then they will be, doing the same stuff. But this time, what they did was that they not only tried to mess around with integrity. So just another 20 seconds. They not only tried to mess around with the integrity and safety and security for our country, but they went a step beyond that, and they started doing stuff related to American security, American safety, American, and they trespassed the boundary. And when that happens, I mean, they have a system, they have measures to contain these things, and they just pulled the trigger. And two of our citizens got their visa denied. And what you're telling me is that Badr Khan is in bigger trouble.
Right.
Than
See, the thing is,
person.
Professor Nachiketa,
This is the overall picture, and that's why we are doing.
Yeah, we have three panelists, so I'm going to request everybody to also try and concise their thoughts so that we can have more conversations and we can go around a little more. Professor Manojit Mandal, where do you stand? See, his father-in-law, Ahmad Yusuf, was Ismail Hania's advisor in 2006-2007. Now, there is, Ahmad Yusuf has been a member of the Muslim Brotherhood for 45 years. Now, a Hamas ideology which says, I need to wipe out an entire... Now, is that not a radical ideology? Should that come under the garb of free thinking? Where do you draw the line, even in academia? Professor Mandal.
No, I think I'd largely tend to agree with my previous panelists that the job of free speech or research in the areas of humanity, you cannot propagate violence. Even if you're not practicing, even propagating violence is not simply done. When we think about ideological, commitment to violence, I think is simply not allowed. I think Anand, this is tragedy of the nation is that we had two great sons in this country born, in the beginning of who ruled in the beginning of 20th century, Tagore and Gandhi. Neither believed in the idea of violence. Okay, this is such a pathetic paradox that many of our students, including the university that I am residing at this point in time, or even in JNU and in some other parts of the country, some of their version of leftism. I have tremendous regard for what Karl Marx did in his time, but to get it distorted in their own ways, where violence becomes an ideology, and still continuing with that, maybe as my previous panelists, talked about, out of frustration, out of what we call misdirection, misguidance, whatever. But at the end of the day, violence is not justified in the land of Gandhi and Tagore. It cannot be. And if this particular researcher who hailed from India, I believed, and now he's having some kind of trouble in the US, if there are links, direct links, even in the terms of propagating violence, it should be proven in the court of law, and law should take its own course. I believe, whether Marxist or not, whether Marxist, centrist, the leftist, the rightist, violence in Indian ideology, Indian politics is never simply allowed. Even in our traditional system, look at what kind of literature used to have. You think about Ramayana, Mahabharata. They were not literature to be shown on TV. They were to be heard. You have the latent narrative of violence in both Ramayana and Mahabharata. But unlike the Western tragedies, unlike Western literature, you do not have violence shown on TV, because the great epics of India, they were never meant to be shown. They were just meant to be heard. They were poetry. They were not meant to be shown. Even in our dramas, violence has no place in Indian culture.
Yeah, but Professor Mondal, you see, one of the things that what I'm trying to say, yes, Lavanaji also, that violence
I don't agree with.
No, I agree, but
I don't agree with Ramayana and Mahabharata not shown.
No,
that's not true.
No, it's not that. Their violence was the last resort. Violence was not the first option. See, there is a big difference there. When all else failed, failed, and the Akranta or the perpetrator crossed all limits, that's when violence was resorted to. Even then, before the first sword was raised, there was another attempt at peace. So there is a difference there when you fight on the... But look at Lavanya ji, in the case, this is still matter is sub judice, and the NIA is pursuing it. What happened in Delhi with Sharjeel Imam? It started from the colleges, right? It started from the universities and spread onto the streets. What happened with Badr is the same question and the allegation the Americans are raising. But my question there is, where do you know what they have done and what they have instigated? It's so difficult to prove it in the court of law. So what can academia and universities and varsities do there? Please, Ji.
The universities can actually examine the views that are expressed. The universities also have access to the course material that is being taught. So if there is any literature or there is any ideology that is supporting violence or encouraging violence, that should be taken into consideration. It's not that it should be stopped, but it should be taken into consideration of where this is leading to. So if it is leading to violence, if it is encouraging violence, or it is urging people to undertake violence, or it is being used in support of violent organizations, an action should be initiated. So universities should be proactive. So universities cannot really, not equipped right now, but it's important that universities prepare to undertake such actions.
No, but is it done by design, Professor Nachiketa Tiwari? Do universities encourage certain departments, and is it done by design that let's identify professors, let's identify these professors, these academics will then identify students who will push this? So that means that there is a certain influence of the donors, the people who are giving the funding, who are backing such curriculum. So who monitors all of that? And that could happen closer home in Bharat also.
Yeah. So I
Funding
know
sources are an
that
issue.
some of the very prestigious universities after 9/11, because 9/11 happened, so there was.
I think we've just lost you there momentarily. I'm going to just give it another 5 seconds to see if he's back with us. Oh, we've lost him there. We'll try and get him back. Professor Mandal?
No, I think Anand, you're absolutely right. At times, some of us, as teachers, do have a kind of romanticized view of a classless society. We still propagate this kind of theories quite seriously. And students, being an extremely impressionable mind, they get easily sort of carried away with this kind of ideology. Is quite natural. There should be a counterbalance to it, as I was trying to mention, and I think you were absolutely banged on. When violence took place in both Ramayana and Mahabharata, they were needed to kill evil. They were needed. They were violence needed to kill evil. But you think about other literature, like the classic Shakuntala, right? No, there's not even latent idea of violence. Despite the fact that the Shakuntala, look at the sense of liberty given to this young woman. She is challenging the king in front of others, but there is nothing. She is not been getting beheaded. That's the kind of culture that we have. Even think about our idea of literature, tragedy. You don't have any sense of violence. But look at Shakespeare, for example. That I do. In every play, you have almost a kind of slaughterhouse. And these plays used to be enjoyed by people, all across. Similar things happened when Karl Marx was writing all his theses in the middle of the 19th century. And as you know, that he had to come to England. He had to stay in England. And that was a very volatile kind of a situation. And I believe Western civilization had always remained a very, very barbaric tribe, very volatile tribe, expansionist, barbaric, and racist, to say the least. Anyone attempting to sort of some of the other imitate them should be done according to our own peril. That we need to make a distinction between the two: the Western idea of life and Indian idea of life. What we had, prior to the colonial system, we need to, some of the other.
No, but see, pardon me for saying this, but then there seems to be a pattern. This is limited to a Samuday Vishesh Lavanya Vamsali. You don't see all religious denominations and all religious groups and all people who back up at different ideologies resorting to violence at the drop of a hat. There seems to be a trend that this license to riot, license to violence, and to resort to violence seems to be taken over by one particular group. Now, how is that? You can propagate a thought process, you can be vocal about it, but who is it who's saying it's kosher to go ahead and claim beheading, go and vandalize, create arson? In Europe we saw it, in Bharat we are seeing it, we're seeing it in America, we're seeing it everywhere.
Right. So one particular group that cannot be named. Any violent activities in the last decade, last 2 decades actually, across many countries, the violence is spurred by one, as you said. So what can be done, right? Under the freedom of speech, it is spreading into universities, campuses. So what can the campuses do? What can the universities do? So all violence, all support for violence should be taken very seriously. As my previous panelist said, students are young, impressionable, so it should be carefully constructed. It should not be completely support for violence. Any support for violence, ideologically driven, religiously driven, fanatical, all these are should be dealt with seriously. As you said, some of these terrorist organizations are banned in one country, not banned in other country, and they are okay to be operating in one country, not okay to be operating in another country. There should be kind of universal human rights designations, universal human rights understandings, universal sharing of data on terrorism and how this is being spread. If they are focused on one place or one campus or one event, this is not going to be completely successful. So to successfully root out the causes of violence, the activities that are taking place, there should be an interlinked, direct sharing of data and activities from the governments.
Right. Not just that. Is it so difficult to delineate a political agenda to a genocidal one? Where if the agenda is not politics, the agenda is the cleansing of ethical cleansing, demographic cleansing, social cleansing of a particular community by another group, then should that ideology be allowed as a part of free thinking? There is a difference between there is a difference between political ideology, political opposition, and also different thought processes in terms of how you would want to see sociological thought processes. But if some people have it in their doctrine that this is what we want to do, we want to change the DNA of an entire region, change the DNA of an entire country, wipe out a particular community and their existence on the face of the earth. Can such thought processes be propagated and be allowed on the garb of free thinking in campuses? Professor Manojit Mandal.
No, but first of all, I'm not in favor of demonizing a particular class of people or a particular religion, because the riots that I was referring to did not happen any of, or were not perpetrated by any of the religious group that, tangentially my speaker was talking about. Riots happened in London a few years ago. Riots happened in USA, a few years ago when Trump administration was about to go. There was an attack on Trump even, a few months back when he was sort of campaigning. So they were not really being perpetrated by the kind of religious group that she was probably hinting at. A fact that violence, I think, has become an order of the day everywhere, whether it is the right winger, the left winger, violence has become part of politics. But the pathetic paradox of that, I feel our country, I'm concerned with my own country, we belong to the land of Mahatma. We belong to the land of Tagore, who never ever propagated violence. There lies the problem. We need to take their lessons. We need to get the lessons. What did they understand? What did they understand even by radicalism? For me, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was the biggest revolutionary of 20th century. Did he ever use arms? Did he ever use violence? Look at the way he used to spread the idea of peace and also revolution. If the Britishers were scared of 1%, it was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.
I think that is also no. So let's agree to disagree there. That if the Britishers were afraid of 1%, that was Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and it was the Azad Hind Fauj. But Netaji also did not look at campus violence and propagate violence among students. He decided to create a bunch of soldiers who would take on an army and fight and resort to the right kind of fight. It's not about vandalism, arson, thievery, and this kind of behavior on campuses. So that's where we will
Organized.
And organized violence. So I think that's where we need to understand, and perhaps most varsities and most universities need to think that they will draw a line. They will say that this is where freedom of speech, free thinking ends. Beyond this, it's not free. Beyond that, then it is volatile and it's violent and virulent for society. So somewhere perhaps that needs to be drawn. Thank you, Manojit Mandal and Lavanya Vemsani, and also Professor Nachiketa Tiwari. Unfortunately, we lost the connection with him midway through the conversation. Quickly getting a move on. And this is an update. Karnataka Cooperation Minister K.N. Rajanna has made a big revelation on the floor of the House at the Vidhana Saudha in Karnataka. He has said that there was an attempt to honey trap him. He further added that there were at least 48 people involved in the preparation of pen drives and CDs, while also claiming that such a honey trap attempts were made to people across the Congress party and also party lines. And this is happening across the nation. Now, that's a larger conversation, and he's made a huge allegation. He has demanded a thorough investigation be ordered by the Home Minister, asking for the names of all those involved to be exposed. Now, Minister Rajanna's son, MLC Rajendra Rajanna, has also claimed that there was a honey trap attempt on him, adding that there was a political conspiracy at play against the Congress. Karnataka BJP chief B.Y. Vijayendra has demanded a thorough investigation, adding that such a confession on the floor of the House was unprecedented. After weeks of political sparring, it seems the Congress, BJP and JDS are united in demanding a thorough probe into this entire matter.
ತುಮಕೂರಿನ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಪ್ರಭಾವಿ ಸಚಿವರು ಹನಿ ಟ್ರ್ಯಾಪ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅದು ಹಾಗಾಯ್ತು ಹೀಗಾಯ್ತು ಅಂತ ಏನೇನೋ ಕಥೆಗಳು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾವೆ. ತುಮಕೂರಿನಲ್ಲಿರೋರು ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಪರಮೇಶ್ವರ್ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ನಮ್ಮಿಬ್ಬರೇ ಅಂತ ಅವರ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಈ ಸಿಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು, ಪೆನ್ ಡ್ರೈವ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು, ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ನನಗಿರೋ ಮಾಹಿತಿ ಅಂತ 48 ಜನಗಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಒಬ್ರು ಇಬ್ರು ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಬ್ರು ಇಬ್ರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಬರೀ ಇವರೇ ಅಂತಲ್ಲ, ಅವರು ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಜನ ನ್ಯಾಯಾಲಯಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನ ಬಹಿರಂಗ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಟೇ ತಗೊಂಡಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು, ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂತವ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂತವ್ರೆ, ಆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬೇರೆ. ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀ ನಮ್ಮ ರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಸೀಮಿತ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರೇ, ಇದು ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರ ಮಟ್ಟದ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಪಕ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಮುಖಂಡಗಳು ಹನಿ ಟ್ರ್ಯಾಪರ ಈಗ ನನ್ನ ಮೇಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಅಟೆಂಪ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ಪುರಾವೆಗಳನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ ನಾನು. ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ದೂರನ್ನ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಗೃಹ ಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು ಒಂದು ವಿಶೇಷವಾದ ತನಿಖೆಯನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿಸಿ ಯಾರೆಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಕೂಡ ಬಹಿರಂಗ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ನನ್ನ ಒತ್ತಾಯ.